So I'm having a lovely time with a new friend, Tina, who is living proof that you can have your life changed. Part of what she said is very interesting. The title of your book.
Getting High with Jesus.
And why that title?
So, I was an atheist.
Atheist?
Atheist.
In other words, there's no God.
No God.
Of any kind.
Of any kind.
Okay.
And because there could not be a God who would let a 6-year-old girl get sexually abused the way I was abused.
Right.
I just couldn't understand.
Not possible.
Not possible. It's not an all-loving God anyways.
When you were little, did you go to church?
I went to church every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday. And
Like a Protestant type of church?
Mennonite.
Mennonite. I know this very well.
Yes, I was raised Mennonite, and every Sunday we went to church religiously, and I met every hypocrite I'd ever met in that church, including my own family. My dad, atheist, would never go to church. My mother, full-on Mennonite, and she is...
Who? She's the one that took you? So she was a Christian.
She thinks she is.
She was a Mennonite.
She was Mennonite, yeah.
She was religion.
Yeah.
She took you.
Yeah.
But she knew about what was happening to you and let it happen.
She did.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to use the channel to do anything more than share people's stories,
story,
because many have similarities to
100%.
your story, right?
100%.
But they have no outlet. They have no Roman. They have no heart tattoo.
Yeah.
They don't have anybody.
Yeah.
They don't have your Herald.
They don't, and you know what? That's why I decided to write my book, because they don't have a herald. Okay. And people search lifetime for a love like he's given me. And for the most part, the first 10 years I was really broken, and I couldn't understand how a really great guy wanted to be with a girl like me. So I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
This can't be real.
I was waiting for the day he woke up and said, "I've made a horrible mistake here. Why am I with this woman? I've got to go." So I was convinced that I was going to hurt him before he hurt me, and I did a lot of really, really mean things, and he just meant it all with love, over and over and over again.
Was he the reason for the title? Was he the human embodiment of this, or how did that happen? He
loved me, and he gave me space to just be me. He was always a Christian. He'd always experienced, but he knew not to talk to me about it. I let him do him, and just don't try and bring me into it, because I had enough arguments. I could argue with the best of them, and there was no God, there was no Jesus, there was nothing.
To you,
to me,
to him, it was real.
To him, it was real, and he just said, "You know what? She'll get there when she gets there," and I did, and I see it now, and it was God being God, and he made everything happen so that I would be open. And then one afternoon, this in Surrey here actually, this Fraser Health doctor and her husband, who was a counselor, they were praying for me.
While they were counseling with you?
Well, I had been talking to the doctor because I was on antidepressants that filled me with rage.
Right.
And when I went to the doctor, they just kept putting me on these antidepressants that weren't working. So I asked her, as a doctor, what can I do? And she said, "Well, have you ever thought of prayer?" I'm, "Well, not really, because you just don't have anybody to pray to."
So all those years, because you're a practicing atheist, and because you've had the experience you had as a child, there's no room for a higher power, no room for God to come into your life.
No.
Until this doctor?
It was actually her husband, who we had been illegally evicted from our apartment, and her husband and I had met through Night Shift Street Ministries.
Night
Shift Street Ministries here in Surrey.
Okay.
They serve food to the homeless, and we would go there for food.
Good.
And then I struck up this friendship with one of the men that worked there, and but they knew, don't talk to me about God, don't ask me for prayer requests, just because I will go off. But he found out we'd been illegally evicted, and he said God spoke to me and told me to have you and your husband come live with me. And I'm like,
wow,
God's talking to you, you're fucking nuts.
Why isn't he telling me this?
Yeah, you know what, I want nothing to do with you now, because you're crazy. You and my junkie friends don't talk to God. You know, God's talking to you, you have issues. So I said, no thank you, I will do just fine. And the next week he said, God spoke to me again, and he said, you and your husband have to come live with me. And I said, no thank you. And we were staying at a hotel and it was $75 cash a day. And if you didn't have $75, they would kick you out. Like if you were $5 short, they would kick you out. And we were short one day, and it was the middle of January, and he showed up at the hotel room door with a van, and he said, "God told me you're ready." We were going to be kicked out 10 minutes later, and I didn't tell him what hotel we were staying at. He just showed up.
This
Knocked
was
on our
you
door.
and Harold.
Yeah. And he just showed up, so I wasn't going to be homeless in the middle of winter, so I said, "Okay, let's go, we'll move into your house." And so we did, and he gave us a room. He actually hired my husband to do a bathroom renovation, bought him all new tools, gave us a van, and about a week after we moved in, I broke my foot. And I was walking back with an air cast, and the doctor took x-rays and said 6 to 8 weeks in an air cast. And maybe your foot will be healed. And I'm walking in the door, and he's walking out, and he said, "Well, you're in luck. Some of God's healers are visiting a church in Cloverdale. You can come and get your foot healed."
So they're Pentecostal people.
So I said, "Okay, this is the deal. I'll go to this church with you. They're not going to heal my foot, and then I can tell you God's a sham, and you'll lay off."
Right.
Right? So I
Right.
figured, perfect, wonderful. So we went to this church, and I'm walking in, and this guy's walking out, and he says, "Your foot's going to be healed tonight." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And I walk into the church, and I could see where this religion thing could really, I can see where cults come in, because
Right.
the energy was great.
Right.
This church,
Sure.
there was a great energy.
Sure.
And we sit down, and this guy comes up and he says, "Your seasons are going to change tonight." And I'm like, they actually do that 4 times a year. And I was being really, really sarcastic and just really mean. And my husband's just like, "Tina, be nice." And then these healers, they got into a line, and they had these words of knowledge. And one said, "I got a word of knowledge for your husband. He's a man with a black shirt, and he's here with his wife in a pink shirt." Now, my husband was wearing a black shirt, and I was wearing a pink shirt, but there was a man in the back who was wearing a black shirt, and his wife was wearing a pink shirt. So he stood up, but the message was clearly for my husband. Like, this woman said things that nobody knew,
Right.
that nobody could know.
So are your eyes starting to open
So
now?
I started thinking, and then after they all finished talking, my husband and the guy we were living with, they went to find the woman who spoke to my husband to learn a little more. And I'm sitting there by myself, and this same guy who told me my foot was going to be healed, at the start of the night, he came over and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he just closed his eyes, and he didn't say a word to me. He just put his hand on my shoulder, and the whole side of my body went numb. And about 5 minutes later, he said, "Your foot's healed." And I said, "Okay." And he says, "No, I'm not lying to you. Your foot is healed." He says, "Try it. What have you got to lose?" So I put my foot down, and even with the air cast, it hurt. There was no pain. So I put a little more pressure on my foot, and there was no pain. And I stomping my foot, and there's no pain. I went back to the doctor that on the Monday. This was the Friday night. The Monday I went back. She took X-rays. There was no break. There was a break on Friday. There was no break
No
on
crack,
Monday.
no line.
No, nothing. Nothing.
And this
This
was
made
a
me-
proof moment.
This made me open, because I know I didn't heal my foot, and I know the doctor didn't heal my foot.
Right.
Something in that church healed my foot.
Right.
It wasn't the kid who put his hand on my shoulder.
Right.
He was a flipping kid.
Right.
So I'm open. I'm not saying it's
It's real.
but I'm open
Something
to learning.
happened.
Yeah, and I want to know what that was.
Right.
So I started reading. I started reading the Bible, and I started reading some books, and then I talked one Friday night at dinner. I was talking to the doctor about these antidepressants, and she said, "Well, have you tried praying?" I said, "Well, not really, because atheists don't really have anybody to pray to, and I don't know how to pray, even if it hit me in the nose." She said, "Well, why don't we pray for you then?" So at the end of the week, after work, they came over, and they just laid me in a recliner, and they just lowered the lights down, and they started praying. I couldn't tell you what they said, because I was no longer in their living room. I was in a dark room watching myself as a 6-year-old child being molested by my neighbor. And there was a voice behind me that said, "That's not what I intended for you, but you have to forgive him." And I turned around, and Jesus was standing right behind me. And I looked, and I said, "I would kill him before I would forgive him." I said, "Do you see what he's doing to me?" He says, "Well, you have to forgive him. He doesn't give a shit." And this is word for word. He doesn't give a shit if you forgive him. It's not about him. If he cared about your forgiveness, he wouldn't have done that to begin with. It's about his controlling your life. He said, "You've thought every man, and it says that love you, is going to rape you or abuse you." And he said, "The one good man is put into your life, and you push him away." And he said, "None of that's going to change until you forgive him." And then I said, well, I can't. And he says, ask for my help. He says, all you have to do is ask. I said, well, then help me. And in that moment, I was enveloped in, you can't even, there's not words to describe the amazing feeling that I was wrapped in. And I forgave him, and we were no longer in that room. We were on a beach, and I could feel the heat on my face, but there was nothing man-made. It had to be some part of heaven.
Sounds like you experienced freedom.
It's complete freedom. Complete freedom. And we spent an afternoon on that beach talking, and he gave me all of the answers I needed to heal all my trauma. And he said, you're gonna have to work.